Just as a warning, there will be spoilers for Chapter 5 ahead, so watch at your own caution, I guess. Okay, so Chapter 5 of Deltarune gave us some really interesting information about the Shadow Crystals and secret bosses, and I really think that this is probably the most important lore drop that we've gotten in relation to these guys since pretty much just in general, man, like, it's really big. So what I'm talking about is that whenever you go to deposit your Chapter 4 Shadow Crystal to Sham in Castletown at the beginning of the game, he tells you exactly what they are, and that is the power of lost dreams, which is very interesting because I don't think that's what anyone thought that the shadow crystals were. I really don't think there were a whole lot of theories that that's what they were. I think it was kind of the idea before was that it was like W.D. Gaster giving these to the Darkners W.D. Gaster the Knight. It could really have been anyone, but they were giving them to the Darkners to watch them go crazy. But now we kind of know that's not exactly true. I mean, the only boss that we know for sure was directly given a shadow crystal is Jevil. And I'm going to talk about Jevil later because Jevil makes no sense. I have no clue what Jevil is now with this new interpretation of what the shadow crystals are. But I just wanted to go over right quick one thing I noticed, which is that other than Jevil and the Knight, they're both these weird edge cases. But for the rest of them, it now makes sense that none of the secret bosses actually held shadow crystals. So basically what I mean by that is that we have Spamton, right? So he had a lost dream, right? He wanted to be a big shot, and he was a big shot for a while, but then the guy on the other side of the phone stopped answering his calls. So the question then becomes, how did he get the shadow crystal? And the answer is, as far as I remember, he didn't. The Neo body had a shadow crystal, not Spamton. And that's interesting, because it's a pattern that other secret bosses have too, is that Darkeners don't hold shadow crystals. Lightners create shadow crystals that then get picked up by Darkeners. So what I mean by that is the lost dream of Spamton Neo is not Spamton's dream of being a big shot. The lost dream of Spamton Neo is the creation of Neo. Neo is what I'm going to use to refer to the Neo body, Mettaton Neo, whatever you want to call it, whatever the secret boss is. But the lost dream is Neo. It is not Spamton. And that is backed up by Swatch's dialogue that said that the robot was the embodiment of a Lightner's dream that Swatch helped to create. So we can only assume that since we know that Mettaton kind of exists in the Deltarune universe, but they're still a ghost, we can assume that they created Neo, and Neo exists as this lost dream of a body they can't have. Anyway, that's about it for Spamton. The only other thing that I wanted to mention about Spamton is that of all of the Undertale characters to reference, Spamton is a reference to Mettaton, and you could say that Mettaton is a big shot in Undertale, and I'll just leave it at that. I think that's very interesting. Moving on, I'm gonna skip the Knight, but I'll circle back around to him later. But I want to talk about Gerson, because Gerson holds a shadow crystal for a very interesting reason, and that reason is he found it in his desk. And so then the question is, what is Gerson's lost dream? And Gerson's lost dream is his relationship with Alvin. So basically, Gerson regrets not being there to help Alvin at church, right? That's kind of what his whole letter to Alvin is about, and telling him to write his own stories, because Alvin's lost dream is the fact that he laments that he cannot finish Lord of the Hammer because he's not that great of a writer. He doesn't think he can ever live up to Gerson's legacy. And so it's this kind of like symbiotic type thing of Gersa and Alvin share a lost dream in the same way that maybe Spamton and Metaton share a lost dream of being a big shot, perhaps. And it's interesting then that Gerson specifically says he found the shadow crystal in his desk, the desk that is presumably Alvin's desk in the light world. It is like their shared desk in a way whenever Gerson comes alive in the dark world. And I just think that's very interesting. I think that's very, very interesting that that's how that's connected. And so the last one, and this is your last chance for chapter 5 spoilers, because I'm now going to talk about the chapter 5 secret boss. And if you haven't fought them yet, I really think you should go into it blind, because it's interesting. It's interesting. So now we're going to talk about Mew Mew. And I think a lot of people, I heard a bit of complaining because good old Mew Mew Kissy Cutie Hatsune Miku was not what anyone was expecting the secret boss to be. I think everyone kind of expected it to be Image_Friend. It was foreshadowed by Sham by saying that you needed the mannequin, and the mannequin's resistant to cat damage. And, you know, Image_Friend, he's a cat. We think, maybe, perhaps, if Image_Friend even exists. I don't even know if Image Friend exists anymore, man. Everything's been turned upside down by chapter 5. So I wanted to talk about it though, because Mew Mew's lost dream is that body, because the ghost inhabiting it, does that ghost even have a name? I think aren't they just called Dummy and then Mad Mew Mew in Undertale? I don't really know. I'm not that up to date on a lot of that stuff. But I just wanted to say that their lost dream is the fact that it is heavily implied that they, like, since the Mew Mew doll is just that, it's a doll, it's an action figure, whatever you want to call it, they physically can't live in the light world in that form, their perfect form. And so the lost dream is the fact that they can't inhabit that. It's a lot simpler to explain than the rest of them, because I think a lot of the symbolism going on with Mew Mew was more about Chris and the Soul than it was about the power of lost dreams. I think that was more so Gerson and Spamton's deal. But the outlier, the one that everyone thought did not relate to anything, the one secret boss that just made no sense, the Roaring Knight. The knight that did not have the freedom motif when every other secret boss has the freedom motif, including Mew Mew, who isn't even a character about freedom. Kind of. I mean, freedom to inhabit the body. I don't know, man. But the knight makes sense now because, okay, right. The knight, okay? The ultimate hometown tragedy. It's the one thing in this game that everything kind of circles back to. The only person not involved in some way, shape, or form with the disappearance of December Holiday is Susie. And Ralsei, but he's a Darkner, so you get what I mean. Maybe Ralsei's involved. Maybe Ralsei was the one who killed December Holiday. That's a theory right there. So the Knight, right? The Knight is this horrible, horrible tragedy in hometown. Something so bad that it was like the talk of the town for a long time. You know, a lot of people, they suspected foul play. You know, big theories going around that maybe Chris was involved, maybe it was caused by a dark world, like the police got involved, which, given what is said in chapter 4 about the police just kind of being there to direct traffic and Carol kind of handles all the crimes, it's very interesting that it's explicitly stated that the police were involved. So it had to be bad, right? It was bad. So what is up with the Knight? I think the Knight is the embodiment of the ultimate lost dream of a teenager that died too early and is left as just fragments of lost dreams. I think the Knight is a dream. And the only piece of evidence I really have is the fact that they are made up of shadow and that they seem to have shadow crystal-like properties to them, even if it's just their knife per se. Man, it's a bit of a crackpot theory, but I've seen worse, honestly, and I think I'm going to do a bigger video about this once I can gather a bit more evidence about it. This was kind of a spur-of-the-moment thing, just with a pattern I recognized with all the secret bosses. I mean, it makes sense. The only thing that doesn't really make sense is how the Knight exists in the light world if it's not physically, actually straight up December Holiday. The only thing I can think of is I'm going to take some evidence from Rudy Knight theory of all places, in that I think that a lot of people overestimate the importance of the Knight's ability to kidnap Undyne. Because I think that no matter who it was, whether it was Des, Carol, or Rudy, I don't think any of them would have been able to kidnap an unwilling Undyne without at least being slowed down. So I think that kind of points to the fact that the Knight has some amount of powers in the light world. But other than that, again, this is just part of a bigger theory that really needs to be expanded on later. So I'm not going to talk about this anymore, but I think it's interesting that now the Knight does fit in with other patterns for secret bosses, and they actually make sense now. So that then proceeds us to the last question. The question that really ate me up about this theory, and that's just, what is Jevil? Jevil has seemingly no relation to Lost Dreams at all. I have no clue about what Jevil is, honestly. Because, like, I guess it's going to get explained later. It has to. But between the fact that he seemingly doesn't fit into this pattern and the fact that he didn't originally hold a Shadow Crystal until the Chapter 1+2 demo released. So it's kind of like Toby had to go back and give him one in order just to say, hey, yeah, Jevil is actually related to the rest of the secret bosses going forward. Or if it was just Toby kind of like, he created the Shadow Crystals to show that there is a common thread between all of the secret bosses. I don't really know. He just doesn't make sense within this context anymore. And if anything, King actually makes more sense as a Shadow Crystal holder, because his dialogue in Chapter 5 says that he has a scar because it came from a Lightner tearing his card, causing the whole deck to be discarded. Card Kingdom is now evil against Lightners, he's the bad guy, blah blah blah, yada yada yada. So, is King not the one with a broken dream? The broken dream of that discarded deck of cards, right? But the only thing is, that doesn't relate to the rest of my theory, that it's actually the Lightner's broken dreams that just are kind of tangentially related to the Darkners, right? So, the only idea I have, and this is completely fan fiction, this is not theory, I'm just making all this up on the spot. But I do have a fan fiction that I think actually explains this. Chris has some sort of relationship with cards, because in Chapter 3's Man Country, we're introduced to the 7 Flying Aces, cards that Chris photocopied to attempt to cheat at a game of cards, and of course that lines up with what we know about Chris, is that they're a goober. So I think the thing that makes the most sense to me is that somehow, some way, Jevil has a relationship with Chris, and that maybe they used him to cheat at card games. Or at the very least, you know, house rule that the Jevil, or the Joker card can be anything. It can be any type of card. So maybe that is Chris's relationship with Jevil. But then the actual part of the fanfiction is that I think that the lost dream of Jevil is kind of like Chris's lost dream of the good old days, essentially. In that the days before Des disappeared, the days before him and Noelle kind of grew apart, the days before the whole drama happened and all that. So there's no evidence for it. It's just fanfiction, but I think that makes sense. And it would tie in Jevil with the rest of the secret bosses, while also making sense why Jevil would be so mysterious, because we really don't know about that right now. That's probably going to be a Chapter 6, Chapter 7 thing, so maybe we'll see some grand reveal of why Jevil exists at some point, why he had a Shadow Crystal. So I may come back to that idea in another video later, but I kind of just wanted to throw these ideas out there, just to kind of get them out there, just to get them out of my head. I do that every once in a while. So if you like this video, subscribe, like the video, all that. I may make more Deltarune videos in the future, especially about the Knight. I think the Knight being ideas of Death's theory is kind of a neat idea. So yeah, I don't, I'm bad at outros. Just get out of here. We're done. You can leave.